Fox News alert: the unsealed warrants in the Mar-a-Lago FBI raid reveals former President Trump is under investigation for potential obstruction of justice and the Espionage Act. This, as we're learning more about what was seized, including 27 boxes containing some classified records, but Trump says they were all declassified. Constitutional attorney and former member of President Trump's transition team, Mark Smith, joins us now. Mark, great to see you this morning. Let's talk about this presidential power. It seems, in my research and in my memory, that as recently as, I think, 5 years ago, there was pretty much a bipartisan, broad coalition of not just politicians, but attorneys who said the President of the United States has the ability to declassify anything. Is that the law?
Yeah, I think that is the law, because remember, the Founding Fathers, Will, as you know this from your legal experience, the Founding Fathers put really the power of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces in the power of the White House, the President of the United States, the one person elected by all of the people across the country. And
I want to stop him right there. First of all, whenever our forming founders done that, whenever they put that in power and in place, there wasn't no such thing as nuclear bombs. That's number one.
And that
back it up a little bit.
The President of the United States, the one person elected by all of the people across the country, and that power and that authority was given to President Trump when he was the president, the commander-in-chief. So the question is, what is confidential? What is sensitive? What is top secret? What is classified? Who makes that decision? Well, at the end of the day, that decision is always made by the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, as to what should be classified, what should not be classified.
But whenever the President took the 15 or 20 boxes of material, he was no longer the President. He believed at that time that he was still the President, or he claims that he believed that he was still the President. I think that's the area that we're going to have to drift off into more so, is understanding that he himself knew that he had lost the election. Once we determined that Donald J. Trump knew that he had lost the election by some of the testimonies that has been given, then at that point in time, whenever January the 6th occurred and he got ready to load up everything, he was no longer the President of the United States, and he knew that he was not the President of the United States. So the mandated rule that he's talking about here only applies if you are the President of the United States. Now let's look at something else. It was Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton that wanted to steal a bunch of pictures and a bunch of furniture out of the White House by thinking that just because, I guess, some country kings or countrymen gave that furniture to them, or those pictures to them, that belonged to them. And there was another debate about that belonged to the people, that did not belong to the Clintons. And then let's look at one other thing, clarifying responsibilities, regardless whether you're a president of the United States or you're not a president of the United States, or you're just a average old Joe that has civil commitments and duties to perform with the United States towards the safety of the will of the people. Let's look at Eric Snowden. He blowed the whistle on identifying what our government was doing towards having the ability to spy on us, that basically drove him completely out of this country into another country. Drove him into Russia. They was trying to get him on espionage charges towards him doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing. This is what happens whenever you go to lying to the American people and you go to covering up lies on top of lies, beginning towards what happened in the latter part of the Reagan era. This is what happens. You're not transparent. You're not honest with the people. And obviously Donald J. Trump, by him taking these records, he had to have a motive. You need to figure out what the motive is. You need to figure out, you need to back up and maybe make some telephone calls and see maybe if Donald Trump had already made a deal with somebody over in Russia, or maybe he made a deal with somebody over in another faraway country towards selling them some information about our national security interest. There had to be a motive. You need to figure out two things. You need to actually three. You need to figure out three things. You need to figure out whether or not he done what he done, knowing that what he done, he was no longer the President of the United States. Number two, you need to figure out whether or not he tried to sell material to somebody for whatever reasons, which I think would be an act of espionage as far as high treason. And you need to try to figure out the true motive. Well, if you can figure out, if you can find a channel or a link to attach him to another country somewhere towards trying to sell that material to them for whatever reason, and it had to be a bad one at that point in time, you got him. He's done. He's cooked. Stick a fork in him. He's through. But until then, we're going through a great deal of speculation. Now, what this individual just got through saying on the upper left-hand corner was providing that he was, in fact, the President of the United States. If Donald J. Trump knew that he was not the President of the United States, he didn't have no right whatsoever in taking those records, just like the Clintons didn't have no right in taking the furniture and the pictures out of the White House, because it didn't belong to them, it belonged to we the people.
Classified. So when President Trump effectively took any documents that arguably could be classified, which I would say is a debatable proposition, and basically actively, took them away from the, he effectively declassified them by acting as such. So at the end of the day, who decides what's classified is the president, really.
Is there any legal loophole in what you just described? You said when he took them, if he took classified documents to Mar-a-Lago, he effectively, that was your words, effectively declassified them. Is there any formal procedure that is required that could have perhaps been overlooked?
Yes, you got to be the president.
Not declassified?
I think there's really two arguments on the other side, Will. First of all, there is an argument that says that there is a regulatory process to declassify documents. And yes, that is true. But the question is, who does that process apply to? And if you are the decision maker, meaning the president, really that regulatory process created by unelected bureaucrats really cannot trump, as I see it, your constitutional authority given to you by the people through a national election. The second argument I would say, Will, is, again, if you think about this, if you look at the statutes that are cited in the warrant, yes, some of the statutes do not require the documents be classified. They just have to be government property touching on, let's say, national defense concerns. So arguably the debate as to whether or not it's classified or not might not be legally relevant if President Trump were to be charged with a criminal statute of the ones cited in this
really
warrant,
quickly,
because not all of them, again, require classified.
Really quickly then, Mark, that sets an interesting proposition. The statutes being cited are legislative laws that seem to put into conflict the Constitution of the United States. If the president has this executive power that is granted to him in the Constitution, in other words, are these statutes constitutional? That seems like a fight that is at the end of this rainbow. That seems like the end of this entire story.
That's right. If you read the statutes, Will, really what you're clearly talking about is they're trying to stop people from spying on the United States government and turning evidence over to our enemies. That's clearly the driving gist of these statutes. As to how they apply to the commander-in-chief who actually has the authority over classified documentation, no one ever thought, I'm sure, this would come up, but why would it?
Right. And what I'm getting at, and I appreciate your perspective this morning, Mark, is we're probably looking at somewhere down the road something before the Supreme Court of the United States, were the legal process to play itself out, as to whether or not Congress can control the president on the ability to declassify documents. Mark Smith, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks, Will.
All right. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Will. Well, we're going to turn now to a few headlines. 14 people are hurt after a car crashed into a restaurant in Arlington, Virginia yesterday. First responders say 8 victims were transported to local hospitals, and 4 of those victims have critical injuries. Another 6 patients were treated at the scene. Police say the crash caused a fire that has since been extinguished. They are still investigating what led to the crash. The final supermoon of 2022 has the world in awe as it illuminated the night sky from Thursday until last night. NASA saying the Sturgeon moon will remain visible in this phase throughout the morning with its various hues and tremendous size seen all over the world. Only 4 more full moons will occur this year, with one appearing each month. Let's turn now to Chief Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth for our Fox weather forecast. Rick, that was beautiful.
Wasn't it nice? The moon closer to the Earth, so it appears bigger. Last time we're going to see that this year. Absolutely beautiful. All right, let's take a look at the weather. There has been a lot going on. So much flooding, obviously, that we've been talking about a lot. And temperature-wise, it feels like 66. It actually is 66 degrees right now in New York. 62.
All new Wagoneers. Per month.
Here to mark the 90th anniversary of the Bowling Proprietors Association of America.
Love, my doctor.
Of Charlotte, North Carolina on this Saturday morning. Good morning and welcome in to Fox and Friends. Reunited and it feels so good. Rachel Campos, W. Pete Hegseth, and me back together again. So glad to see you this morning.
Look at that camera work.
Good morning.
Hey, well done.
So the band is back together, but it wasn't easy getting the band back together.
Until this week. I flew to Iowa for the Field of Dreams game. That's covered on Fox. And I was delayed until the middle of the night, which was only half of the nightmare because once I got to Iowa, I didn't have any clothes. The airline has lost my bag, and American Airlines still has not found it.
Still don't have it.
Still do not have it. You can
Somewhere
see
in
some
the
of coverage
cornfield.
there. Yeah, I don't know if they dropped it off in the cornfield or if it's stuck somewhere in who knows what city, USA. But I did end up, I had to go buy clothes, and the producers bought me some nice clothes. This is what, there you go.
Yeah, and the tag is still on.
I put it to Brian Stephen Ainsley. I said, should I keep this shirt? Because I left the tag on it.
Right.
And the vote was yes, keep it. And so I think we've got some
You got these for us too?
vacation shirts for you guys as well.
You got a flamingo shirt in Iowa?
I'm not sure that one came from Iowa. That one might have come from New York City. But
You got me a little, I love a V.
I'm really good.
One of the highest levels of government classification, documents that are only supposed to be viewed at a secure government location. We should note, no charges have been filed so far in the investigation. And in response to the search, former President Trump claims that he declassified all the documents that were seized by the FBI. CNN political correspondent Sarah Murray has more.
Newly unsealed court documents are revealing more information about exactly what the FBI took when they searched Mar-a-Lago earlier this week. We are learning that the FBI took with them 11 sets of classified documents. That includes 4 sets of top secret documents and various classified TS-SCI documents were of the highest classification levels. Now, while they were there earlier this week, they were there investigating 3 potential crimes. One of those was violations of the Espionage Act, so gathering, transmitting, losing defensive information. The other is obstruction, concealment, removing, mutilating documents, and then lastly, destroying, altering, or falsifying documents. Now, of course, we don't know if this is going to lead to any criminal charges.
Ain't that something? I was charged with the same charge, with falsifying files. My charge didn't have nothing to do with documents, but according to the Tennessee statute here in Weakley County, that had terrorist implications. So I tend to wonder about the same wording with these same charges, if one wasn't a attachment to the other towards them saying that it had potential terrorist threats. If you pull down a fire alarm and say fire, 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 or if you're in a theater and you cry fire, fire, fire. In other words, it's a violation of your First Amendment right, because there are limitations in how far somebody's rights should go in freedom of speech. So, of course, I wasn't in no theater, and I wasn't in no school. I didn't pull down no fire alarm. I didn't create any type of frenzy like that. I'd say maybe Donald Trump would come near fitting underneath that category towards creating a panic here in the United States of violating these rules and ethic rules and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because it has heightened the concern towards just exactly who is in control of our secrecy whenever it comes to various things that is kept from the American people.
To any criminal charges. The former president has not been charged with anything, but it is, of course, an amazing, incredible step to see the FBI there searching Mar-a-Lago and then for these documents to be unsealed by a court. Trump's allies were taking pains to try to downplay the documents that were taken from Mar-a-Lago and also insisting that the former president has the ability to declassify documents. Of course, that tends to go through a process, a normal process, in order to actually do that. Sarah Murray, CNN, Washington.
And in the wake of the Mar-a-Lago search, FBI Director Christopher Wray says his department is remaining vigilant due to growing concerns. According to law enforcement sources, the FBI is investigating an unprecedented number of threats against Bureau property and personnel, including agents with direct involvement in the Mar-a-Lago search. Just yesterday, the names of the 2 agents who signed the search warrant paperwork were circulating online in an apparent leak prior to the official unsealing, which redacted those names. Still, the FBI has not commented on any specific threats against Bureau employees. CNN national security analyst Julia Kayan joining us now for more on this. She is a former assistant secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. Great to see you, Julia. Thank you so much for getting up with us this morning. So let's go through this inventory of documents that were seized. So according to the search warrant, federal agents seized 1 set of top secret SCI documents, 4 sets of top secret documents, and then you have 3 sets of secret documents and 3 sets of confidential documents. So different classifications,
right.
Though we do know that 4 were top secret. So look, Donald Trump's Florida home, we know it's not a secure facility, it's a resort, right? And it's also his residence. Right. Could you talk about just the unprecedented level of this and how dangerous the fact that these documents were there is?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think because we talk about documents, we tend to not think, okay, what's the substance of the document that then could lead to some harm or vulnerability for the United States or our allies. And so not just the breadth of the documents, I mean, we say boxes, a lot of boxes, 11 boxes of documents, and also photos, which is interesting. Are there photos of our capabilities, our military capabilities, photos of individuals? We simply don't know. The framing of what we know is the most secretive documents, the TSSCI as you describe them, and then you get down to TS and then secret and then confidential, that there was a significant number of them that were with level of case. That a lot of documents are within that classification, but it's not done casually, because essentially you do want information to flow within government. This means that the reader really has to have a reason, because the potential disclosure, the potential destruction, the potential publication of that document could harm an important governmental interest. In this case, given what we know about the division within DOJ that's doing the investigation, it is related to national security.
And because you're an expert in this, just give us a sense, Juliet, of what kind of information is usually, put into this classification category.
So I think an easy way to think about it is sort of the world I had come from, so sort of, counterterrorism. So one way to think about it is you'd have sensitive, you'd have classified information, which is there's 12 investigations going on related to Al Qaeda, let's say. The top secret would be we have this many assets going after these 12 groups. Now the TSSCI, this is where it will get interesting, would have the names of the individuals that you're searching, the resources that the United States is using to try to counter that terrorist threat. Now this is just an example, but you can see why you would want to keep the TSSCI quite quiet. It would have named individuals who you're targeting, who might be involved in an investigation if it's a counterterrorism case. So that's just one example of how different categories are related to the substance of the information in the document. So if I'm reading something, in most cases, if I'm a government official, I don't need to know the name of the person that the United States has targeted in a counterterrorism case. TSSCI would have the name of the individual, where he was, and how he was being targeted. That's just hopefully that's a helpful way for viewers to understand what the difference is between these documents.
Yeah, it really is helpful.
But at the same time, why a standing president is a president, by law, he has to be given the name of either the group or an individual that supposedly threatened that president during the time of his presidency. And the reason why I know that is because of the way that they handled my situation in Wheeling, West Virginia, whenever they lied and said just blatantly that I was on my way to Washington, D.C. to take out George H. Walter Bush's life. That they had me pegged as me being an assassin. That was 2 years after the material went to Ronald Reagan of the 9 tapes. So it actually opens up a brand new venue of Homeland Security Secret Service, regardless whether it's Secret Service in Nashville, Tennessee field office or Secret Service in Memphis, Tennessee field office, that this group of people know exactly who the individual that is speaking in behind the camera right now is and was, and they done everything in the world to try to taint, corrupt, assassinate his character by trying to make him out to be the bad guy, the monster. And the whole time, the monsters was the ones that didn't reveal the truth pertaining to how Ronald Reagan ever accomplished what Ronald Reagan accomplished on the latter part of his presidency to begin with. So yes, there's different degrees and there's different depths of security measures, but once more, you have to look at this particular scenario of stealing in these documents. Number one, did Donald J. Trump know that whenever he took them, he was violating all the principal laws? Number two, did he know that he was no longer the president by law, even though he was blundering out that he was the president? Number three, what was his motives, and can you prove his motives in regards towards why he done this? It could be based around something in the scenario towards what went on with Eric Snowden. I've said that, I'm going to say that again. It could be, depending upon what kind of information that he obtained. Because he may have felt like that the American people and the world justifiably needed to know about what it is that they're talking about. And I'm going to tell you what I think tripped the wire. I think what tripped the wire was about 2 weeks ago whenever Donald Trump said, whenever he was playing his golf game up there pretty close to where the Twin Towers fell up there in New York, and it caused so much controversy. I think what tripped the wire was whenever he said what he said, that the American people still has not gotten to the bottom of 9/11 associated with the Saudi Arabian government, associated with the United States government. I think that's what tripped the wire, and I think somebody was going to show him how the cow was going to eat the cabbage, and that we'll just go in there and we'll confiscate these records and make sure that he does not have proof of these records. The thing about it is, Donald Trump, he's not a dummy. He may have already made copies of all them records. There is a rat in the woodpile that smells rotten in here all the way through, because I know the way that I have been jabbed. I know the way that my rights has been violated, regardless whether it was my civil rights or my humanitarian rights. I know that how the churches has been manipulated here in America. I know that how the politicians in Washington, D.C. have basically pulled the wool over the American people's eyes to the degree that now we're trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. You know, whenever you go to war for 20 years and 11 days later, the very people you went to war against comes back and takes the country back over, it's kind of self-explanatory that that was a failed mission. After $2 trillion in 20 years, and God only knows how many psychological pains and the lives that was destroyed over that deal. It's an abomination of the trust to the American people. Now, why Donald Trump done what Donald Trump done has yet to be disclosed. Has yet to be disclosed. And also, what Donald Trump was talking about towards getting to the bottom of 9/11 has yet to be disclosed. But I guarantee you, between the two, it pegged somebody up in the national security system that they wanted this to be sealed, locked, and basically loaded, as far as nobody being able to obtain any real records pertaining to the real truth in regards towards who actually masterminded and implemented 9/11. I guarantee you they tie together some way or another here, because there was too much heat on Donald Trump, not just with the controversy, but also with them already involved in trying to obtain these records from Donald Trump up until that point that this order come down the pike. There was already a lot of heat. And whenever Donald Trump said what he said, that's whenever somebody got worried. They got overly concerned because America has basically saddled down or saddled in with the Saudi Arabian government because of the close ties that we have with them towards the oil, and the close ties that we have with them towards selling them military hardware. And I guarantee you, it brought enough caution that this is the aftermath of that caution. Now, they're not going to probably tell you that on national TV. They might, but once more, they're tippy-toeing around all this stuff. The bottom line was Donald Trump the President of the United States. Yes, past tensively speaking, he was. Did he or was he aware, consciously speaking, that he was no longer the President of the United States whenever he took the records? That's something that they're going to have to prove. Then you're going to have to find the motive. And the quickest way of finding the motive is if you can find somebody out there that's willing to come to the plate and say, oh yeah, me and him was already talking. We was going to give him $200 million for this information towards how to design this nuclear bomb, or how to do this, or where this secret silo was over here in this area, or where this secret silo was over here in this area. There's a lot of mysterious questions that need to be asked now, because now this is coming out. The genie's out of the bottle. They've done taken the toothpaste out of the tube, and you can't put it back in. Now they're going to try to cover it up the best way that they can, or the best way that they know that they can, but the bottom line, they couldn't cover up once Eric Snowden done what Eric Snowden done. But yet now, is Eric Snowden looked upon as being a hero or a zero? Well, in their eyes, the very government that we've hired to protect us, that they've made such of a incredible failure of in the past 30 plus years towards protecting us from terrorist attacks and school shootings and all this other stuff, proof is in the pudding towards not only them not doing their jobs in protecting us, but proof is in the pudding towards how that they're covering up stuff that maybe we should be aware of. Maybe there was some sort of a trivial motive in behind what Donald Trump done, such as Eric Snowden. I just know this to this day, I don't think Eric Snowden is still welcome back into America. That's the reason why he has set up shop over in Russia somewhere, which is sad that somebody with his sophistication in intel like this had to move out of the country because his own people looked upon to him as being a traitor, even though the American people looked up to him as being a hero. This could be one of them same type of scenarios. I'm not saying that it is, but it could be. There had to be a purpose, a motive, why Donald Trump wanted these records. That's what they got to get down to the bottom of.
Us, an idea of how sensitive and vulnerable these documents can make our country. So we know, look, I mean, we saw what we saw from the unsealed warrant. Obviously, the affidavit, which would speak to the probable cause of a potential crime being committed, was not unsealed. But look, the few details that we do know, right? According to the property receipt, there was a document about pardoning Roger Stone and also material about the president of France. What do you make of that?
So this is really, it's complicated. I mean, in the sense of why these seem so random. So Roger Stone might be related to January 6th and an ongoing investigation. So that might be classified in some way, or the information about some investigation that was going on about Roger Stone in the Trump administration, and he wanted to keep those materials. The president of France is an interesting example. I know there's lots of speculation online. I'm not going to say what because I don't know. No one knows what the substance is. But I think it gets to a broader point, which is the extent to which our allies are looking at this and thinking, this is really bad for us, because a former president who had access to not just the U.S. secrets, but their secrets through NATO, through Interpol, through what's called Five Eyes. It's an intelligence sharing capability amongst sort of five allies, that all of that also is vulnerable. So we can't just look at it from our perspective of what does this mean about Trump and his election and the Republican Party. This is a nightmare for the Biden administration, because they have to, this is out in the real world, right? Not Mar-a-Lago. This is, things, there's a war in Ukraine, there's challenges with China, and allies are rightfully concerned. Why the heck is the former president of the United States, holding on to some documents about the French president, right? And since we can't answer our brains go to really weird places.
Right.
And this is where Trump has put us, right? It's just we're not like a mature country because everyone has to go into the sort of depth.
Because Donald Trump has not been playing by the normal political standard rules. That was one of the reasons why Dick Cheney said what Dick Cheney said in regards towards Donald J. Trump is one of the most highest security problems in our republic. Well, what exactly has our republic turned into? Our republic is supposed to be transparent with its people. Now, granted, if there are nuclear silos planted in areas that don't nobody know about, you probably need to keep that kind of information classified for the alternative worst, in case the worst was to occur. But other than that, why would you want to work under the table in our own government no longer being trustworthy to the degree that if a president was to announce certain behaviors, it could absolutely turn the cartwheel upside down? And that is what they was trying to prevent from doing. But because they have made such of a splash in doing that, now it has created more curiosity. It has created more anxiety to the degree that now it's going to be much harder for government officials to try to hide, cover up the initial problem to begin with, which falls under the category of a group of people that was lying to its own citizens. And this, I do not believe, is what our forefathers intended towards how our government was supposed to run in the shadows and in the secrets of certain areas like this. I wish to God that the nuclear bomb never did get created. And now, because of stupidity, I guess, that information has been strode and sold and taken out of context, and now countries that we don't even know about probably has nuclear sophistications as far as nuclear warheads. I wish to God that I realize why that they done what they done during World War II pertaining to the atom bomb. I know why they done what they done to get rid of a tyrant like Hitler and stop the war in which they were successful in doing. But the technology growed and the pretense got worse, the motives got even worser, and now we're at one of those standoff situations between one country versus another. Well, I've got just as much power to destroy you as you do me. And basically, it's true. We can destroy one another, but at the end of the day, what have we done other than destroy one another with all these nuclear inventions? At the end of the day, what has we accomplished other than being able to destroy one another with our nuclear inventions? And that's basically the sum of it right there, folks. I don't know what Donald Trump had in mind whenever he done what he done, and that's the part that the American people is going to have to get down to the bottom of. Because now there's been a big red flag that has waved, towards some sort of a breach of the who, the what, the when, and the why.
Carelessness with him.
And Trump's allies, they've honed in on the fact that the search warrant, shows the FBI, they're saying, waited several days to execute the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago because, they didn't have enough on him. What would give investigators reason to wait if matter, like national security was an issue?
Right. So in this case, there's a couple of explanations. We don't know. I mean, the Trump people are sort of putting up so many procedural myths about how this thing works. The president can declassify on his own, and lo and behold, it just happens to be that he declassified these, even though, to remind viewers, he was fighting handing them over without making that claim. So he's just making stuff up now. So think about the delay. In this case, just based on my experience, they didn't want Trump at Mar-a-Lago during the raid. That's just clear to me. So Trump finally had left Mar-a-Lago for the investigation, for yet another investigation up in New York. He pled the fifth 100+ times during that investigation of his financial dealings. You would not
400+ times
want Trump there. So they were timing it with the Secret Service or whomever else just to make sure that it did not become the kind of circus that Trump, of course, inevitably made it. So I don't think much of that delay at all. And then there was a weekend in there. It's just it's not silliness. It's just a way that
I still say it's based around the golf tournament, and it's based around while Donald Trump was running for president, he made a promise to them people of 9/11 in New York, because Donald Trump's from New York, that he was going to get down to the bottom of it and he was going to disclose the truth about 9/11. And whenever Donald Trump said what Donald Trump said, that the American people still haven't got to the bottom of 9/11, that pressed enough red buttons that somebody said, you know what, we're going to have to shut this guy up, and the only way that we know to do it is to go in and obtain the information that he supposedly has. Like I said, he may have been smart enough to make copies. If you're going to hold the government hostage over something that the government should have revealed to the American people at the very beginning of something as big as 9/11 that basically almost killed 3,000 people, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of antsy people that's beginning to wonder, oh my God, we don't need this to come out. If this comes out, then this is going to cost us over here, and then they're going to question what went on over here, and it's all going to stem right back to the Bushes. Oil, money, profit, greed. I still have yet to get down to the bottom of how come OPEC was ever given over to Saudi Arabia to begin with. If I'm not mistaken, that had to have happened during the Carter or the Ford or the Nixon era, way back either in the 60s or the 70s is whenever that decision had to be made. And of course, Donald Trump, in some of the rhetoric that he has put out there to the American people, well, why don't we just go over there and take their oil? If they're going to play and dangle with us the way that they do towards raising the oil up to be able to shortchange not only the American people but the world, to the point that in one quarter, Exxon put out something like $23 billion of profit, not counting what Shell and all the other oil producing petroleum products done. Maybe they do deserve to be shaken down pertaining to the oil industry as well as OPEC, towards somebody taking control of what they're doing to the world.
That the Trump people sort of deflect the very substance because they have no defense at this stage, and so they either create procedural sort of mythology about how things work, or of course, as we know, they sort of ratchet up the violent speak and the incitement to get people angry.
And speaking of that, inciting people to get them angry, I mean, we live in a world now, right, where you have the federal magistrate judge who okayed the search warrant. I mean, he was getting such violent threats that they had to pull his bio from the Florida court's website. But also the fact that you have FBI agents, you know, who have risked their lives defending the Constitution. Now they're dealing with threats. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
So, I mean, it's been my reaction for...
The genie's out of the bottle. The genie's out of the bottle and they can't put her back in. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.